she's Cindy Bruner. She has a master's in education. She's worked with children with disabilities for over 10 years. She is passionate about creating unique learning environments and interventions that center around the child's strength to support success in the home and community. She has her master's in education from University of Cincinnati with a concentration in school psychology and applied behavior analysis. She has been with Envision CITE Services program for 8 years. She's the director of the CITE Service program now. So, thank you, Cindy, for coming with us today.
If you haven't heard of CITE Services, we work with families in Hamilton County, Claremont County, and Warren County, providing in-home parent education and support. We do a lot of toilet training. It's probably one of the #1 requests from the families that we get, because you all know it is something that is important to the kids being able to be in different environments, just the cost of the diapers, and it's something that's really important for their independence. So we get a lot of toileting requests. So I've done a lot of toilet training. We serve kids 3 to 22. I would say most of the time the toileting requests come when the kids are about 4, 5, 6 kind of age frame. But we'll work with older kids too, and I've done toilet training with kids that are like 15, 16, older as well. The average age for a child with Down syndrome to be toilet trained is about 7. So, I mean, usually we're starting before that, and we can get some good success before that as well. And so we've toilet trained kids at 3, I've toilet trained kids at 10. And, everybody's different, and how long it takes them is different. So we'll go through kind of our process that we utilize in CITE. If you are interested in CITE services, we're a free service to families, but you do have to have eligibility through the County Board of DDS. So if you're interested, or if you have questions about that, feel free to see me afterwards. Feel free to see our website too. We're at envisionohio.org as well. Raise your hand, ask questions. I do want it to be interactive. I like to make sure I'm answering the questions that you have. I like to tailor the presentation to the group. So if you don't mind, how many parents have a child under the age of 3? Okay, so you guys are like just starting to think about it. Okay, how about like age 3 or 4? Okay, and then older than 4, older than 5, 6? Okay. So it seems like the largest group are like thinking about it and doing maybe 3, 4, 5, kind of trying to get probably some skills established. And then if there are older kids that you've tried things before and you want to know, I tried this, I've done this, like what's the next step? I can answer those questions too. All right. Okay, this was working when I tried it before. Not saying. Okay. Well.
I
don't know. I'm totally frozen. Oh wait, hold on. There it is. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Just an overview on toilet training in general. So these are the different things we think about in planning our services for our kids. So, and we're going to kind of go slide by slide through each of these things. So first we need to think about adaptations that are needed for the bathroom and the toilet. We'll talk about how to use motivation, how to find the right rewards. Think about establishing consistency in a sitting schedule. We'll talk about readiness and what that looks like, and help hopefully you guys to kind of think, okay, when will we be ready? Address any red flags that might come up, so things like sensory concerns or medical issues that might come up. And we'll also talk about how to increase the conceptual understanding of the child. So just their understanding what this new expectation is and what the toilet is for, and trying to increase their understanding of it. So all of these pieces you kind of have to think through and really plan to get kind of the toileting independence that you're looking for. Maybe some people in here have typical kids and they're like, I hear this sometimes, like, well, we just toilet trained in 2 days and they kind of picked it up and that was it, and I didn't really like do much about it. I didn't really think that much about it, they just kind of did it. Well, some of the kids we work with, it's not going to be like that. Maybe it needs to be a little more planful, and maybe it needs to have more repetition, and it's going to take a little bit more time. Doesn't mean that they can't get there. Just means you might have to be more planful about it. Yeah, and also maybe thinking about when they're ready for toilet training so you don't wear yourself out. Because I have had parents that request toilet training like right at 3. Like the child turned 3 and they were like, we want to toilet train. And we were like, okay, we can try, but let's think about, are they really ready for it? Because if not, you are going to spend 3 years toilet training, and guess what? You're going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm done. You know, the child's going to be like, I'm done. I don't want to, you know, do this anymore. So just thinking about when they're really ready. And usually that has to do with whether they're doing some of the self-care steps that usually come before toilet training. Are they doing those steps first? You have a question?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just have a point to make, because we are enrolled with CITE right now.
Okay.
We have reps that come to the house every week to help with the potty training. And the one thing that we had, and we're in Hamilton County, and I understand this can really vary, but the one thing that we felt like we had to kind of work out is like sort of when they're interested, but also like what the waiting list looks like. Because I understand some counties, like, it literally can be like 6 months before you like get it, and even in Hamilton County, which is pretty fast, it was like, you know, we did it, but then we had to do paperwork, and then we had to have meetings. I mean, I do not say this to like complain, because I think people did a really nice job of like setting expectations and explaining the meetings, but you know, I guess I wonder if you could comment on how it is a little bit of that like time play, like you might want to start it even if your child isn't like you know.
I guess, I can speak to a little bit of all that, I would say. In Hamilton County, it's true, our CITE waiting list is much shorter than in the other counties. So if you're looking for CITE support with toilet training, it's about, in Hamilton County, we're about 3-month wait at the most. We do an assessment phase, which is going to take about 6 weeks. And then is when we're really going to say, okay, here's all the intervention, here's what you're really going to be doing day in and day out to work on toilet training. So you're right. I mean, you're thinking that's 5 months, 6 months of time if you're kind of waiting for services. In Claremont County, it's true the waiting list is much longer. If you're in Claremont County, we're more like, and I don't keep that waiting list, so I don't even know exactly where they're at, but it might be 9 months, a year, or something like that. And Warren County is different. It is prioritized for behavior support. We have some services there. We also have toileting services that are immediate, pretty much. You get immediate toileting assistance, but it's a much shorter amount of time that we can be with you. So that's a little different. I do think too, if your child is not showing readiness and you are hoping to get started, there are ways to work on readiness. So there's ways just to get them more aware of what's happening, and that might be somewhere that that's where you're going to start. If you're really feeling like, okay, they're going to kindergarten and I really want them to be toilet trained, then you could just, and they're not really showing any awareness, then I'm going to start there. So we can talk about that too. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is complete this toileting assessment that I gave you guys as a handout. So this is going to help you guys think about where you're at and and what you need to think through. So we're going to kind of go through the questions. If you want to write your own answers down, I mean, that might be helpful for you, but if you just want to follow along, that's fine too. So this is the first thing that we start with, is a toileting questionnaire with the families. And looking at this first page, it's mostly about medical concerns. So if there is a medical concern that might impact toileting, it is good to know that up front. Did y'all get one? Did it not? Okay, there we go.
Does anyone need a pen?
There are some up here. She's got them. Okay. So the first question is about constipation. Constipation will affect not only urine training, but also bowel movement training. So because there's a lot of pressure involved with constipation, it can cause some pressure onto the bladder as well, and it can make it harder to hold your urine, make it harder to go longer time frames between eliminating. So if your child has constipation, be thinking about addressing that as you are toilet draining. So be thinking about increasing liquids. If they take Miralax, making sure you got your dosage right, because that's such a, is hard. I don't know if anybody's on Miralax, but it's tough to get it exactly like right, where it's like I'm not having like diarrhea and then I'm not like super constipated. So kind of making sure you get your dosage right. If that's 1 cap every 3 days, if that's half a cap every other day. So I know there's lots playing around with that. But be thinking about that. You want to be addressing the constipation first. So if you're answering yes, think about that. If there is any diagnoses around bladder or bowel sensations, control, that's something that you might want to address with the doctor. UTIs can play into fears, so if anybody has a lot of UTIs, that might be something that you need to plan for, more like relaxation strategies. Just thinking about stool consistency, which usually goes hand in hand with constipation or diarrhea. Any special diets that are causing kind of a concern around the EMs and regularity, hemorrhoids, sexually transmitted diseases, and then just making sure the physician's kind of cleared you. Looking at that list of medical concerns, does anyone have a specific question about something that they might, yeah?
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
So the gluten-free and not able to eat dairy, I mean, those are both pretty common in the Down
Yes.
syndrome community. So what's the association with that and it being a concern for body change?
Just in that they're having regular bowel movements. Just in that they're getting, and really, I don't know if it's specific to that diet, but some kids who are really strict on their diet, then that plays into having regular bowel movements. So if they're on a special diet, but you see regular bowel movements, you don't see really different, huge variance in like the consistency, like that they're not always having diarrhea, then it's fine. That's the only, yeah.
My other question
Yeah.
is the question about have a diagnosis that could affect their bladder, bowel sensations and control. I mean, I'm just guessing that with low tone, that like
It
what's the
could.
experience? Like you're kind of speaking to the Down syndrome community here. Like what's the experience in that as it relates to
Down syndrome.
yeah and like
I don't-
control, like muscle, low tone control.
I don't, in my experience with a child with a Down syndrome diagnosis, that typically it doesn't affect their ability to make progress, and you can go with a more traditional toileting approach. For children who have more of a dual diagnosis of Down syndrome and autism, then it's maybe something else. There are other factors you might want to consider and think about. If someone had like cerebral palsy or some other physical disability, and even in comorbid kind of kids, then I would be thinking about other things. But just in a traditional Down syndrome diagnosis and that's it, then
So you might
No.
be going to be addressing this later, so if you are.
it's okay.
But like, so the age range that you gave us,
Mhm.
I mean, that's pretty startling as a mom of a toddler. So what is the reason, I'm just being honest, like what is the reason for the age being 7 versus?
I think it's thinking complete independence at 7. Thinking I don't ever have to, like they are always gonna go themselves. They're always gonna initiate themselves. They're gonna always hold, they're gonna wipe themselves. Like, that you will have no part in the toileting. I think that's why it's older. Because there are so many elements of toilet training that a child needs to learn. Like, you need to learn to walk into the bathroom, you need to learn to pull down your pants, you need to learn to eliminate, then you need to learn to hold, and then you need to learn to initiate. So that's why I think, and you have to practice each of those steps more than, maybe somebody else. Yeah. And I will say, like that, we've toilet trained a lot of kids at 4 and 5. So, don't worry. Yeah. Yeah, and it's an average. It's an average.
Yeah.
You're right.
But younger animals.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions about medical concerns? Okay. The next page is about sensory fears, emotional concerns. This is something we ask about the punishment, but I mean, and typically that doesn't come up very much. I wouldn't worry too much about that. But if they show any fears of the actual sitting on the toilet or flushing the toilet, if they show fear around actually eliminating their bowel movements, like I have a kid right now who literally will like cross her legs and like will not like relax and have a bowel movement. So if there's like a fear that seems to be associated, or they are just, it is a like screaming tantrum just to even get them into the bathroom to sit down, that there might be some sort of fear there, or don't want to sit on the toilet. And then any sensory concerns that might come up, like smells. This is a lot of kids maybe more like on the spectrum potentially, but if like they're playing in the toilet and that's impacting their toileting success. So those are just things you'd want to think through, because if there's a lot of fears, you got to step back and start with just the being able to sit on the toilet in a relaxed way, and being able to, follow directions and walk into the bathroom when directed. And I'll get into more of this, but is there any specific questions? Like when you read the questions, are you thinking, oh, that's my kid, I might need to think about that? Yeah.
Just maybe when the fear to go in the bathroom, I sometimes have trouble separating whether it's fear or just like our daughter would rather be doing something different.
Yeah,
Like,
just
like that.
like I'm kind of playing with something and I don't really want to go.
Yeah, because it's more, where we're trying to get her to go every morning, for example.
Yeah.
Before she heads out.
Yeah.
Is there a way to distinguish or whether it's fear or just kind of other interests outside of potty training?
Yeah, I think if they are willing to go, if you say first go to the bathroom, then you can have iPad, or we can watch that favorite cartoon, or and if you do that, on a kind of consistent way, and they're then willing to go into the bathroom, then I think it's not a fear. It's just I really wanted to do something else, instead. If it's a more consistent, fear response, that won't work potentially, and it persists after you are consistent with the times you're sitting. Like if it's every morning, this time I've said first, then I've been consistent for a week or two, and I still am not getting somewhere, then I might be thinking it's a little more fear-based.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah. Any other questions about that page? Okay. The next one is readiness. We do look for, most kids have observed other people eliminating. If your kid hasn't, definitely have them start observing other people eliminating, like you or your husband or significant other. We do look, are they able to stay dry and unsoiled for at least an hour? It is tough. I've worked with kids who pee like a little bit, like every 15 minutes, every 10 minutes. And that is very tough to potty train. So maybe either waiting until they're a little older to see if that they can hold better, or you got to start with just them being more consistent and holding their urine a little longer. So we say 1 hour. We'd like to see them be able to stay dry through a nap. If they can stay dry overnight, then you are definitely ready to toilet train. So you go ahead and start, but it is not a prereq to be toilet trained. So if they pee every single night, that's okay. You can still toilet train during the day. If they show an awareness to them eliminating, are they showing an aversion to having a wet or soiled diaper? That they are going. So I would be thinking, like, are they looking down? Are they like, oh my gosh, I'm wet? Is there something? Or would they literally just sit there and just keep playing and it wouldn't bother them? To me, that's like, okay, maybe you're not quite ready if you're not showing any awareness to you eliminating and going. Almost all kids have consistent liquid intake with their urination, so you don't really have to worry about that. Regular bowel movements help, but is not a requirement. The other thing I'd add under readiness is, does your child do some of the other self-care skills that typically develop before toileting? So those are things like, can they take off their pants and their shoes independently? Can they pull up their pants? Like once you have them on, can they pull them up? Can they eat with a fork and a spoon? Not like well, but can they use the utensil enough? You know, can they take a sip from their own cup? An open face cup, can they sip from an open face cup? Not to say like they wouldn't spill it if you left it there, because like every kid would, but you know, can they do the motion? Those are things I'm looking for. If they can't do those, I would work on those things first and then work on toileting, because those are typically things that become beforehand. Any questions about that? If you're thinking about your own kid and thinking, are they ready? Do you feel like you have a good sense of if they are or what you would be looking for? Yeah.
Do they definitely have to be walking? That might sound silly, but.
No, it's not silly, because we toilet train kids that are in wheelchairs, and we do toilet train those kids, or aren't completely ambulatory. So it doesn't always mean that they can't be toilet trained. If I think that's a skill that will develop in that child in the next year or two, I might wait, because it might be easier to wait. But if it's not a skill and they're approaching 5 and 6, and I think they have some of those other self-care skills, then I might go ahead and start trying. The first step is going to have them be toilet trained in that I'm directing them when to go. So if at first I'm directing them to go and they're going to be scheduled trained, then it's okay if they're not totally ambulatory. I might be able to pick them up and we might be able to go to the bathroom each time, and that might be okay. But like I said, I mean, if they're you might want to wait if you think, okay, it's almost an emerging skill. They almost have it, and they're at the age where other kids are picking it up. Other questions about that? Yeah.
So I've read a lot of things that aren't specific to Down syndrome about like when your kid's ready to be potty trained.
Okay.
And it always talks about pulling, if they're able to pull up their pants.
Okay.
But like our kids' hypermobility and low tone with their like dexterity with their fingers is really tricky with pants pulling up.
This is what I would say.
That's what I wouldn't ask.
Yeah. One, I would not expect them to pull up really tight leggings, because those are just hard to get up.
Okay.
I also wouldn't expect them to necessarily get it up over their bum, like over the diaper, because that's really hard to do. But I would be maybe looking for them to just be able to grasp and pull to like here.
Okay. Like trying to do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Yes. That's a good question. Yeah. At least like some kind of trying effort to do it a little bit. And you know your child best. So if it's like you think their fine motor skills are the only thing that is like impacting that, then they might be ready, Because some kids, you're right, like their fine motor skills that's not gonna develop till much later. And that'll be okay. Yeah. Other questions about readiness? Okay. Physical modifications, this goes into the adaptations. You definitely want to be looking at, can your kid sit on the toilet and be able to balance and feel like secure on the toilet? If they can't on your big toilet, you want to get an insert. Typically, I just recommend an insert. Some people like those little potties that sit on the floor. You can do that too. I don't think they're necessary. We typically just do big potty with the insert. So, and the ones that have the handles on them so they can hold the handles. We also like their feet to be planted on the floor or on a stool. So get a stool like this, you can use like the squatty potties. Yeah, that go like all the way around. Those are kind of nice. Or just like a normal stool so that they feel like really secure up there. Some kids will kick it away and they really don't like the stool, and so that's okay if they do. But typically we start with that. And we do try to look for ways where the kids can be as fully independent as they possibly can with getting onto the toilet, getting off the toilet. That's something typically we're practicing, especially with the little kids. So it's not like a readiness thing. It's just, you just want them to start practicing that and having a stool and being able to do that as independently as possible. Okay, so that's like that's our questionnaire. Any questions that come up from that? Okay. So that's our starting point. So hopefully you've identified any medical, concerns, red flags. Hopefully we've thought through some readiness, kind of know what to be looking for. Wrong way. Okay. So then your next step is to think about increasing their conceptual understanding. So how are you starting to introduce the potty and what it's there for? So, the children's books, videos, there's lots of YouTube. I think this YouTube might be broken, so I might have to send them a new link. We have a specific YouTube video that has a little boy that's toilet training. And it's nice because it shows urine going into the toilet. It's really just a squirt water bottle that they squirted, but it looks like pee. So it's nice because a lot of the books and the YouTubes, they kind of skip over that step. Like Elmo goes to sit on the potty and then Elmo's all of a sudden done and flushing. And you're like, well, what did Elmo do when he was sitting there? So you do want to make sure you're intentional about no, he's really peeing when he's sitting there. You can make your own personalized stories. Those are really nice and very easy to do. So take pictures of your child, take pictures of each step of the toileting process, and write them a little story about themselves. And you can you can Google it and find some stories to kind of cheat off of, or use the Elmo story, but take pictures of your child and make them their own story. And just make sure in your story you're going to say, Johnny is peeing on the potty. And then you can do some modeling through imaginary play if they like imaginary play. So if you have the doll that pees on the potty, you can pretend that. We use little, what are those? Not Hershey Kisses. We use little chocolates that look like poop.
Tootsie Rolls?
Yeah, Tootsie Rolls. Whoever said that? Yeah, we use Tootsie Rolls. We've actually taken the stuffing out of a bear, and then you can push the Tootsie Roll through the mouth of the bear, and then it poops, and you push it down through. That's for really kids that are really struggling with the whole pooping concept. So anything like that. So start talking about it, start reading stories about it, that might be the next slide. Yeah. Start observing your routine, right? Start overemphasizing your own signals. If you guys are playing together or you're in the house with the child, you're gonna say, oh, mommy feels like she has to pee. I feel the pressure. I'm gonna go potty. Come with me, let's watch. Look, I'm gonna put my pee in the potty. That's where it goes. So really talking about it a lot. And yeah, observe the final results. The other thing we talk about is changing, if you can, change the diapers in the bathroom so that you can start associating urine and bowel movements and eliminating with the bathroom. So even if that's just you have a nice rug, comfy rug, you can have them lay on the rug and change their diaper in there. And then if you can put the bowel movement from the diaper into the toilet, if possible. Sometimes it's not. But if you can, and then you can talk about how poop goes in the potty and start associating all those things with the bathroom. So if your child is not showing readiness signs, but you want to start working on these things with them, these are the steps to start taking with those kids, like the books, the videos, having them change their diapers in the bathroom, that kind of stuff. And there's more too. Adaptations that you might need, we talked about this. So make sure they look very secure on the toilet. So right now I'm working with a little girl and she's peeing in the potty all the time. She's fine with that, but she's not pooping in the potty. And when I went and I said, okay, let's try it, we kind of sat her on the toilet and she's like only will sit on like this much of the toilet, you know, and she's kind of like always trying to get up a little bit. And so we were like, okay, let's have her get an insert, even though she's a little older, and they thought, oh, she doesn't need it anymore. She's peeing in the potty, like we can move on past that, but she just, and then when they pee, then I'll be like excited and we'll have a potty party and dance and sing and do whatever else. So think about that too. Any questions about that? Okay. So one thing you are going to do is you are constantly sort of assessing and adjusting your interventions based on their progress or lack thereof. So like we said, you're progressing through these steps and you're kind of constantly assessing, are they still motivated by whatever I picked as my reward? Are we making progress? Are they getting more eliminations in the toilet this week than they did 2 weeks ago? If you can collect data, it is really helpful, especially if you have a child that's going to need a lot of practice and this is going to take a little bit of time. How are you going to know if you're doing better than you were 3 or 4 weeks ago? The only way you're really going to know is if you write down how many times did they pee in the potty this week and how many accidents did they have. Is that better than what they did a month ago? So if you have a kid that you know it's going to be like, you know, we're going to do a lot of practice, that's okay. Just make sure you can celebrate that and they can celebrate that because they'll get it. It's just you know, make sure you're able to like be happy with that progress that you're making. So be thinking about maybe you want to collect some data. Maybe you graph it with them. How many did we get in the potty today? How many, you know, successes did we have this week? Then you'll both feel really good about it. We do that a lot. And just being consistent. Toileting is a big old skill. It's a lot of elements all wrapped in, you know, into the skill. So just being consistent as possible, keeping your sitting schedules, keeping your rewards, keeping your time on the potty the same, and just being consistent with it. And then accidents. They happen. We remain very neutral. We don't say anything negative. We just say, you know, I know next time you'll put pee in the potty, or I know next time you'll keep your pants dry, you'll try and keep your pants dry and put pee in the potty. So we just keep it, you know, keep it positive and be very flat affect about it. If you really need to, you could have them help with cleaning up their accidents too. It's not my go-to because I think, one, when they're learning, I don't really think it's their fault. I think they just had an accident, you know. And two, I don't want it to become like a really big, I don't want it to become like a game or something fun, like, oh, we're cleaning up an accident. Isn't this so fun? You know, sometimes you get out like the spray bottle and like all of the paper towels, and then it becomes kind of like this game. And so I don't want it to become a game. But if down the road, if you feel like that would help, you can have them help clean up with accidents. Toileting intensive. We do intensives. Like I said, that's like the oh crap method, or that's like the 4 days, all I'm gonna do is toilet training. We will do that with kids. Usually when I feel like we're ready for that is the child showing readiness, that we've already tried a sitting schedule for at least, you know, a couple weeks, a month or so, and we've completed regular sittings. They are used to sitting on the toilet. They're pretty okay with sitting on the toilet most of the time. If I feel like their rate of learning will allow them to learn toileting in a couple days, which I have kids with Down syndrome, yes, they can, I've done it. And if you can commit for 6 hours on 3 to 5 days, and you are literally just sitting in the toilet all day for 6 hours. If anybody wants to do an intensive, I can email you our intensive plan. I didn't give it out tonight because it is a little bit more complicated, and I don't want to give recommendations that I can't give you a little more follow up about, because I don't want you to spend 6 hours in the bathroom and it be like a terrible experience for everybody.